Hi guys, welcome to TXE Tells All. We're gonna have a hot topic tonight, and I know it may bring some emotional responses, and I'm well aware of the sensitive nature of the topic. But I think it's important for us to talk about it. On TXE Tells All, we talk about one of our playlists is pre-law, law school, and beyond, and we also talk about social justice causes and other racial topics. So this one kind of combines those two together. As you can see by the thumbnail, we're going to talk about Rutgers Law School student who used the N-word in one of the classes online, and a whole debate has erupted as a result of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the actual case, and I kind of want to hear what our viewers have to say about the topic because we have viewers who are from different cultures and everybody might have a different opinion. My opinion may not even be the same as someone from my same culture. So I respect everyone's opinion in the sense that you have a right to have an opinion. And I guess I feel my opinion is right and you may feel your opinion is right. But we can have a nice positive and hopefully productive discussion about it. So I'm going to read to you what actually happened. And this is at Rutgers. So just give you a little background. I went to Rutgers for undergrad. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I went there for undergrad. This actual event happened at the law school. So I didn't go to law school. I went to a different law school, but it hit home because that's my hometown and my home alumni. I'm alumni of that school, so alumnus of that school. So let me read to you what actually happened, and then kind of get your feedback about what do you think about it. And I'll tell you what I thought about it. But let me read to you. So it says, race row erupts at Rutgers Law School after white student uses the N-word while quoting a 1993 legal case. Classmates clash with prominent professors over call for total ban on the word. All right, so here goes what happened. It was a first-year law student, a woman who has not been named, used the slur in a class of 3 during Professor Vera Bertelson's virtual office hours last October. So this didn't just happen. It happened in October, but it's just becoming popular now because I'll explain a little bit later why is this becoming popular as of today, which is May 3rd. In discussing a case, she had repeated a quote from a defendant, which was then used in an opinion written by former state Supreme Court Judge Alan Handler. The student said, quote, he said, and I'll use a racial word, but it's a quote. He says, I'm going to go to Trenton and come back with my N-words, end quote. One of her 2 other classmates at the New Jersey school, a white student, then contacted her to say that she should have not used the word. After one of those present shared their concerns with black classmates, a petition calling on the mature student and Professor Brogelson to apologize circulated. So it grew from there. The petition reads, quote, at the height of a racial reckoning, a responsible adult should know not to use a racial slur regardless of its use in a 1993 opinion. We vehemently condemn the use of the N-word by the student and the acquiescence of its usage, end quote. A faculty meeting Friday also discussed barring the words use in class. Others at the school, including former New Jersey Attorney General John Farmer Jr. and ex-state public advocate Ronald Chin, have signed a statement in support of Bergelson, that's the professor, and the student. Professor David Lopez said, I share the views of several of our faculty members who understand and express to their students that this language is hateful and can be triggering, even in the context of a case, and ask that it not be used. But Professor Gary Francione has called a ban problematic, implicating academic freedom and freedom of speech. He said, quote, although we all deplore the use of racist epithets, the idea that a faculty member or law student cannot quote a published court decision that itself quotes a racial or otherwise objectionable word as part of the record of the case is problematic and implicates matters of academic freedom and free speech. So that kind of gives you a little background on what happened. And just, I guess, the title could be a little bit misleading. And so I kind of want to know what you guys think. I'm going to get a little to what I think about it, and kind of what I thought about before I even knew what a little bit of the context was. I still don't know everything, but the article gave a little bit of background. And I would say this. At first, I thought that the student was just using the word in the classroom in their regular speech, and maybe that's how the problem came up. But upon further digging, it said that the student was actually quoting from a court case. So for those of you who are in law school, who are going to law school, you're going to be reading a lot of court cases, and they usually use the exact language of whoever's talking to bolster whatever the opinion is. And so the student in this case was merely repeating the racial epithet that was used in the opinion. She herself was not using it in that context. So to me, I think that kind of takes away the sting a little bit from what I would think would be a problem. I would also say, I guess, in the context of it being used in an educational forum. So we're talking about law school here, and I know like this issue has come up before with elementary school or even high school students who read certain books that have, I think it was like Huckleberry Finn or something. Some of these books have racial epithets in them, and there was a whole like petition about banning those books from the curriculum. So I guess it's come up in the context of education before, but maybe at a lower level. In this context, is adults. These are law students. They're adults, and they're talking about a case. Personally, and feel free to chime in, but personally, I think that I would not be offended by her using the word in the context of, and she says, and I quote, and reading what the person said. I would not be offended by it. I know we are living in a time where it's been a lot of racially charged things happening, especially in the last year with the Black Lives Matter protests and just kind of whatever is going on in the world. So you do have to be a little bit more sensitive about things. But in this instance, I actually don't think that the word should be necessarily banned. My opinion, because she was using it in that context. So then you walk a fine line when you say, okay, it shouldn't be banned, but these are the exceptions. It's almost like the English language where there's like so many exceptions to the rule that it shouldn't be a rule. But I really think there should be some exceptions to the rule because she was using what someone else was saying. So then it kind of goes down to like, okay, well, if it was a Black person using the word, would we have this problem? Because if you say a ban, that means nobody can use it, right? But if it was a Black person using this word, would have brought on this petition and would have been such a big idea. Like the article said, the people were mad about the professor not intervening and saying something about it. Later on, the article says that the professor, she said she didn't even hear the person use the word until this petition circulated. And she's like, that happened on my watch. I didn't even know that. I would have addressed it at the time. That's neither here nor there, right? But so now we're like, okay, so who gets a pass? And so it's like, okay, if you're Black, you get a pass. If you're not Black, you can't say it. If you're white, you definitely can't say it. It kind of says, okay, who's in charge of this word? So it goes back to the history of the word. So the history of the word was it was created, the word nigger, Nigger, was created to call somebody ignorant. And it was used by white people in reference to, usually we're talking about Black people. And so it was used as a slur against them to say that you're ignorant, you don't know anything. And so it was used in a very demeaning and negative way. And so then it evolves since then. It's been used against us to attack Black people. It's evolved since then. It's turned into Nigga, where people use it as a colloquialism to refer to their friend, their homeboy, their homegirl, and it's kind of used more frequently in regards to people who are, I guess, on the same culture. So is that okay? Because then somebody else might observe you using the word with your other person that's Black, and then they're like, wait, does that mean I can use it too? And then it's like, no, we're in charge of the word. That's the thing, right? We say we're in charge of the word. And I don't know if that's necessarily okay either. What do you think? Let's see, we have a comment here. I'm just trying to figure out if that's okay to say like, oh, we're in charge of the word. You can't say it, but we can say it, or nobody can say it. How about we just do away with it from everybody? So let's see. Ms. Linda says they are quoting real life events. To understand the full effects of what is being referenced, it will be spoken. I would not be offended, and I am Black. Okay, so there you go. Somebody else who is of the same culture as me, Ms. Linda, says she would not be offended if that was used because of the context. So, Miss Linda, would you be offended if they used it like to refer to you about something, and not necessarily in a negative way, but to say, "Hey, you're my friend"? Does it kind of, is it a gray area? Because I think that's what happened here. To say there's a ban on the word and to start a petition, I get that it can be triggering to some people. Especially I'm kind of younger, and so the older generation that was around where that the word nigger was used as a weapon, I can understand how that can be triggering, right? So I don't take away that effect. I'm trying to be empathetic to that those type of people who have lived through that, and I didn't have to, thankfully. Right. So I'm trying to understand that, but then also trying to measure it out with the context that was used in here in the educational system. So I think that if you're in the school system, this classroom, she, I don't know if you should feel necessarily safe to say anything, but I don't think she should have been worried about quoting what something else was said, especially if she didn't have any ill intent. And from what I read from the article, she didn't have any ill intent. That's what I gathered from it. Now, I wasn't there. So maybe this petition was revived from people who were there and maybe it gave off a different vibe. I'm not sure. I'm not, some things, sometimes you don't know how things get so out of control sometimes, but in this situation, it's kind of like, okay, how did we get here? And we kind of know with other circumstances how we got there, but here I'm wondering, how did we get here, especially in this particular realm? I don't use that word social. Oh, I don't use that word socially ever. Okay, so Ms. Linda says she doesn't use that word just in regular everyday talk. Some people use it. I know it's used in a lot of rap, I guess, verses. Is used actually in certain cultures, like as everyday, like, "Hey, what's up?" And then other people like, "No way, I would never use it." And I guess it's a personal preference, right? But then it's like, okay, who should be allowed to have the personal preference? Can this white person or a non-black person have that saying, "Oh, this is my personal preference"? So what do you guys think? Because I know we have people from all, I guess, walks of life, younger people, middle-aged people, older people. I kind of want to know, Ms. Linda kind of commented, but I kind of want to know, what do you think about it? Because it is, we're definitely living in a time where people feel like they're walking on eggshells and trying to figure out what they can or should not say. Is it offensive? And I think we should be mindful of things, but I think in this particular circumstance, I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing because she was merely quoting. Now, as far as banning the word in the classroom, I mean, there are other racial epithets that are used against other races. Should those also be banned? And then what if we don't know everything? We don't know that certain words are being used if you're not kind of in those cultures and you're like, oh, they used to refer to me this way. So how do you make a whole list? Who makes this list up, and how does anybody enforce it? Because that's what it usually comes down to. Like when you make a list of rules and you're saying, okay, you can't violate these rules. The only thing that usually keeps people from keeping with the rules is that there's consequences to them, right? Consequences for breaking the rules. But how do you enforce it? Like as a regular person, like if you say in my classroom we can't do this, so is the person suspended from your classroom? How do they finish the class? How do they get a grade? It kind of opens up a lot of what ifs. And I don't know if policing the word is the best way to deal with it. Perhaps a positive spin on it. So kind of having, if you watch my other video, I did a video about how certain law schools are having race and diversity classes as part of the required curriculum right now. That's a proactive way of dealing with racial issues. So it's kind of like the carrot and the stick. Which is going to help the person feel like, oh, I'm going to listen? You're going to bait them with the carrot, or you can beat them with the stick. And I think having that proactive way of saying, let's talk about race and cultural issues, and then you can better appreciate why things should or should not be said. Versus like if you ban this word, because if you say this word, you get suspended, you get put out of this classroom. I don't feel like that way will be as effective as positively motivating people to understand. And I think maybe some of these Black students, maybe I don't know if this is the Black Law Students Association or just the Black students unofficially at the school who started this position. I don't know really what they want from this or what is kind of behind it. So I'm kind of interested to see where this goes, because as I mentioned, this actually event happened in October 2020, and it's May 2021, and the petition is just circulating and just being publicized now. But okay, so what happened between October and May? What happened to the student? What happened to the class? What did something change that made these students feel like it was necessary? And then you have the people who you have the people taking sides. Like one person is saying, okay, no, this is ridiculous. Another person on the other side they're saying they're supporting the professor and the student, but she didn't have a problem with it. So it can be very divisive versus coming together and saying, okay, this is the history of it. This is the history of a lot of things. Let's talk about it in a safe space. So that's my personal opinion. I kind of want to know what the other viewers think. Comment in the comment box. But I think that coming from Rutgers, and then Newark is in Newark, New Jersey. It's kind of a diverse area. Well, the Newark campus of Rutgers is very diverse versus the New Brunswick campus, and you have a whole bunch of different cultures there. You have people from Iran. You have people from Spain. You have people from just Americans. You have Jamaicans. You have Nigerian. You have a lot of different cultures specifically at the Newark campus. So if anything was going to happen, like that is where, a lot of things usually happen at that campus, because you have it's a melting pot. And that's a good thing. If you watch my other video about why you should attend a school that's racially diverse, is because you can appreciate other people's cultures by going to school with them and just having dialogue with them in your daily interactions or in the school, in the classroom realm, versus like out in the street. I feel like it's a safer space to have it in the classroom for, because it comes from, I guess, a place of you really want to learn. You're there at school to learn. So it comes from a safer place if you bring up a racially charged issue. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to be like a heated topic or a heated discussion. It will be, but it will come from a place of these people are passionate about whatever the topic is, but also they are educated and want to actually teach somebody, or they want to learn if they're going to be on the receiving end of it. So what do you guys think? I think we'll see what comes of it. I think that, let's see here. Adam Scales, a Black professor at Rutgers Law, said, quote, "There is something extremely antiseptic about the term N-word. There is something that softens the impact." What softens the impact? I don't know. He didn't finish his statement, so I'm not really sure what he meant. He said he signed the statement of support of the law professor. So he doesn't feel like the law professor did anything wrong, even though she really didn't know what was going on at the time, because she said she didn't hear the slur being used. But the student is said to have spoken with the classmate at the time of the incident after they raised concerns. One of the students in the class then alerted others to a recording of the session, and Professor Lopez was told of student concerns. The professor who this happened on their watch, she told the New York Times, "I wish I could go back in time to that office hour and confront it directly. I would never use the words in class." The student has got an attorney to represent them. Samantha Harris said, quote, "When you're an attorney, you hear all kinds of horrible things. You represent people who have said horrible things, who have done horrible things. You can't guarantee a world free of offensive language." Now, Samantha, I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. As as a lawyer, if you've seen my other videos, you got to take a stance. When you represent somebody, you have to see both sides of it and be able to take a stance on something. And sometimes you got to pull something out of you, right, to represent somebody. So I don't know if that would be Samantha Harris's strongest argument, that you're going to be offended by a lot of things, because yes, freedom of speech is important, but you have to also recognize how it impacts others. So, what kind of case would that be? A discrimination case to say that the person doesn't feel safe in the classroom because these racial epithets were used when the person was in the classroom, and the person or the school, Rutgers being a state institution, meaning an arm of the government, did not interfere with that, and she basically felt that was a hostile environment. That might that could be an argument. If you watch my other videos, I mean, you can sue anybody for anything, right? Whether it sticks and whether you win is a whole nother story. But to think of like, what would the person win, or what would the person sue over, and what would be a good argument and a counter argument? I would have a hard time, because if you have a jury and you have somebody on the jury like me who is of the same persuasion as the person that's offended by it, and I feel like I wouldn't be offended by it, you're gonna lose. So then maybe that's the time when you choose a judge versus a jury to decide your case, because juries can be very unpredictable, and you only gotta persuade one person, right? If you have a judge as the person deciding the case versus picking a jury trial, that can go against you. I don't know, try to convince one person versus 12. The burden of proof, though, in civil representation is preponderance of evidence. So you don't have to have a beyond a reasonable doubt to win. You don't have to like say, okay, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, I feel like discrimination was here. But I think that, yeah, you might want to pick a judge on that one and hope that they are very overly sensitive about the topic, because like I said, if I was on the jury, you're not winning. You're not winning that case, just because as I explained earlier, I'm not offended by that. Another context, and like I said, this is for me only knowing a little bit of the situation and not knowing the full story, but I think that this could go many ways. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Comment below. I kind of wanted to see what you guys think about what's going on right now, how it impacts. Would you see things differently if we didn't have all the Black Lives Matter protests going on? Would you see things differently? Do you see things differently from me? Because I'm open to having a discussion to see what people think. But that's kind of my little 2 cents on the matter. I wanted to give guys the time to comment if you have anything, but I think, let me just read one more thing. Okay, so the deans of the school, the co-deans of Rutgers Law School, David Lopez and Kimberly Murchison, told Daily Mail in a statement, as the co-deans of Rutgers Law School, we recognize that the hurt that our students experienced following this incident, and we know that none of the involved parties acted with ill intent. We are committed to doing better for our community going forward. This experience raised critical issues about law school pedagogy and provided us with a welcome opportunity to talk as a community of faculty, students, staff, and administration committed to anti-racism, about productive ways to teach about race in our classrooms. Those discussions are not about stifling academic freedom, ignoring the First Amendment, or banning words, and we are not seeking to alter any of the existing university policies that already protect academic freedom and free speech in the classroom. Instead, we are discussing how best to create classroom environments in which all of our students feel seen, heard, valued, and respected. We are confident that our faculty share that common goal as we work together to train the next generation of leaders for our state and country. So that's their response. That's their like PR response to that matter. Let me see here. We got a comment from Hello World. This is a con on Black people to limit free speech. That's an interesting perspective. What do you mean a con? You think that interesting. That's an interesting perspective, but they said they're not ignoring First Amendment or banning words, and we're not going to alter any academic freedom. But they almost said, if you watch my other video about how USC and UC Irvine they're putting together a curriculum that includes race and diversity and how that impacts us as a world. So maybe Rutgers needs to get with USC and UC Irvine to see what they're doing, because I think that they're onto something to have a better discussion about it, so that this situation doesn't happen where anybody feels offended. Because granted, when they have these classes, someone probably still will be offended, right? But it brings the discussion in a more, I guess, safe environment. So let's see here. Hello Will says, they make you go along with banning speech. This is the kind of Black people that limit free speech. They make you go along with banning speech. So So if you watched earlier, maybe let me see. Maybe not make, but you know what I mean. Okay, so I think banning speech. Well, if you watched a little earlier, I said I don't think in this situation banning it is going to be the right way to go about it. I think that it should be a positive discussion about the kind of the history of it. But in this circumstance, like I said, I don't. Just as the co-dean said, in this case, I agree with them. It was no ill intent here. Now, a case by case basis, should a person feel like, oh, somebody can come in the classroom and just call them any kind of names under the sun, knowing they have this racial history, negative history? No, I should be able to feel free to come to class and not feel like I'm being attacked. And so I think that a ban is a little bit too intense, but it should be a discussion on it. And I think that when we talk about kind of like banning things, you kind of skirt the First Amendment. Like you should be able to say what you want to say, but not at the expense of discriminating against somebody, making them feel like there is a hostile environment because of what you're saying. So you can say certain things, right? But there are also some consequences with things that you say. So keep that in mind when they talk about banning things. Hi, Judy. Hi from North Carolina. Hi, Judy. She has a YouTube channel as well where she talks about pre-law and law school and other law related things. So thanks for joining us, Judy. So yeah, this has been quite a topic, and I think I don't know how this is going to pan out. I know when I was in law school, we had several protests in the. I guess when you're young too, you're a little bit more. When you're younger, you're a little bit more, I guess, go-getter, or you got the time. You're in school, you got the time to kind of think about these issues, and like we got time to protest. And hopefully, I think that's kind of why the Black Lives Movement has gone so far as it has, because it's been like younger people pushing the movement. And it's a good thing when people are passionate about certain things. As long as it's for a good purpose, wanting to have equality and to be seen as a person and not less than someone else. And I think that's where it comes from. Like we don't think we're superior. We just don't want to be seen as inferior. So that's what I take from it. So let's see. We have another. If you redact the word, you take away the power, the hurt that word carries behind it. It could possibly change a case. That's true. I don't know if it's necessarily necessary because sometimes you also, in that context, the Supreme Court judge quoted what the person was saying, the defendant was saying in that case, and it got a feel of what's happening. So let's say this is the Supreme Court, so this is an appellate case, right? So it's not before any judge or it's not before any jury. This is just judges reviewing a case, saying whether the trial court made the right decision, right? So in that context, maybe they could have said N-word instead of using the actual word that the person used. Maybe they would have made a difference. I don't know. Perhaps we would not be sitting here having this conversation right now. So let me see. I didn't realize this was a live stream. I thought it was yes, Judy, we're live. So I think there's a lot of different opinions about the matter, and I think that I'm gonna be interested to follow how this ends up. But yes, I think it was a good discussion in regards to how, since it involves my culture, just like it involved a different culture, I feel like I necessarily couldn't speak on it. But even when it involves my culture, I recognize that everybody doesn't think the same way as I do. And that's okay too, right? Because we all have different experiences. I bring different experiences from my perspective, how I grew up, where I grew up. But coming from the North Campus of Rutgers University, I have a little bit of a, I guess, feeling about how some of the students have felt in that sense, because I used to be in their seats as well, and knowing that I appreciated the different cultures, and I would never want someone to feel. And I shout out to my Rutgers University North professor, Professor Hull. She works in the political science department, and she's a white professor, but she also dealt with some classes that had race, and she did an excellent job of moderating the topic. And even though from her perspective, she could not ever probably appreciate what her Black students or whatever the race was going through, she did her best job to empathize. So I appreciate that in that sense, because you have to understand, like, if you're not that person, you cannot fully appreciate it, but you can still empathize with somebody. And I think that goes a long way. Let's see if I can make sure I got all the comments. I hear people of all races singing along. I love on the Big Island, Hawaii. I live on the Big Island, Hawaii. Oh, I missed the first comment. There are way too many songs with that wording. Yes, we talked about, like, a lot of the rap culture uses it, and they use it as a way they took it back, supposedly, took the sting out of it because it was talked about before in a negative way, and now they use it as a colloquialism to say, like, my friend, my dude kind of thing, and that's their way of taking control of the word. So yes, I agree, it is used a lot in songs, and so then it's like, okay, who's banning this word? Because it's used a lot. Let's see. If I were a student there hearing a white student reading out a racial slur, I would have felt taken aback too. Well, Judy, I don't know if you came in a little later, but she was quoting a Supreme Court justice opinion and was reading, and she said, I quote, and she read what the actual quote said. So it wasn't, what I found different was the context, because she wasn't actually using it herself. She was saying, listen, this is what the Supreme Court justice said, and she just read what the justice said. Could she have said the N-word? Perhaps she could have. But I was saying I wouldn't be offended by it because she was reading it in that context. Let me see. We got all the comments. Yeah, having a bunch of songs saying them words is terrible. Then non-Black people start thinking it's cool to say it too. Yeah, so then I think that's true. So it kind of like, okay, who's okay to say it? Because if you like certain songs, let's say you're into rap culture or just, R&B culture or certain other songs that use it a lot, and then you're singing along, it's like, oh, but when that word comes, do I skip over it? Do I say N-word? I mean, it does bring in the context. And then it's like, wait, can you be offended by it? It's like, but you're using it. I can use it. You can't. That's what it comes down to sometimes. And is that okay? I think it can be, it depends on who you ask. And as I said, like, the older generation might say, no, that's not okay. They knew this thing that came with the original word, Nigger, and they're like, no, it's not okay. Under any circumstances, it's not okay. Then you have the younger generation that's singing along with it, and they're like, it's fine, it's no big deal. But then they didn't have to endure what the older generation endured either. So it depends on who you ask. Live on the Big Island. Oh, okay, hello world. You live in the big. I want to visit Hawaii. Big hello world. When this pandemic lets up, maybe I can come to the Big Island. I've never been there, so that's cool. We have somebody from Hawaii on the chat today. Let's see who we have. In this day and time, we must be sensitive about the words that are coming out of our mouths. We have the power of life and death with the words that we speak. That's very true. Like, you do have to be sensitive, but then do you have to be overly sensitive? Like, should she have said N-word instead of reading it? Since she didn't say it with ill intent, does it matter? Kind of like in the law, like, certain crimes are general intent crimes. It don't matter what you intended, right? And some of them have specific intent. Like, it mattered what you thought about it. First degree murder, you have to have the intent to kill somebody. You have to think about it, turn it over in your mind, and then execute the plan to kill them, right? So it's a specific intent. Other ones is like, you run a red light. You red light is general intent. It doesn't matter, like, oh, I didn't know it wasn't a red light. It doesn't matter what your intent is, right? So in the law, I think that intent, it depends. It comes up in different circumstances, whether intent matters or not. In this circumstance, it's like, okay, in this situation, she didn't have ill intent. Does that matter if she still offended somebody? Maybe. As I said, I wasn't offended, but somebody else was. And a lot of other people were, because they started this whole petition about it. So did it matter about her intent? This ain't a crime though, so. Here, it's extremely hard to prove. Yes, you can't know what people are thinking unless they let you know what they say. Arguing with a fool, like, you should have remained silent. Nobody would have known what you was thinking. It was thinking a whole bunch of nothing. You should have remained silent. So yeah, it is hard to prove intent. And if she says she didn't, there was no ill intent, I would believe that. And that's why I said, like, if we're talking about suing somebody civilly and leaving it up to a jury, would a jury agree that she didn't intend to offend anybody and create a hostile environment for the other students? You might have some jury that would agree on both sides. So let's see here. She should have known better, but I wouldn't be protesting and totally going after the student. Okay. So it's like, it would have been just like a lesson. Oh, this is a lesson to you. Don't do that again, and not taking it to that level. I think though, because as the article was talking about, because we're living in a time where it's very racially charged right now, protesting can be popular, right? And so whether this was one of those, oh, this was a good way to utilize your time in protest, I don't know. I don't know if I would join the people who've created the protest. But then again, it's like a lot of times in the Black culture, we don't support one another. And it's like, this is another example why we can't get nowhere in life, because we don't support one another. It's like, but is it like support people blindly? What if I don't agree? Like, you don't, it's almost like when you're husband and wife, it's like, oh, we can disagree at home, but we in public, we have a united front though. Should we be doing that? Like, united front in public, go back, like, you know, we didn't have to protest that. Like, that wasn't even called for. I don't know. I think if that's a hard one to call. But I don't know. I would have to think about that one before if I joined her. Like, you guys know she didn't mean it, right? She didn't mean it this time, but the next person, this is just a time for the next person to say something slick, and then they think they get a pass for it. So a lot of people, I guess, are worried about the slippery slope, and I guess the professor not doing a better job at moderating the class. Oh, this was during office hours, so they're virtual. It was virtual office hours, and it came up. So I guess during that time, people were allowed, like students were allowed to be on the Zoom or something with the professor. So it wasn't necessarily in the classroom setting. So maybe she was asking a question about it. And you do talk about racial topics and racial cases in law school, like Plessy versus Ferguson. You're gonna talk about what's the Love case where the somebody help me out here. The Love case is in Virginia where they said that you could marry somebody of a different race. The name is escaping me. Anyway, you're going to talk about a lot of racially charged cases in law school because our history is built on slavery. Like we went through a civil war because of slavery. Like, we're going to talk about things that are racially charged in law school, and in the context of how it's legal and how basically people use the legal system to. I just had a light bulb moment, but just how people use the legal system to kind of justify what they were doing when it was dead wrong. Like, slavery was legal. Like, people were counted as 3/4 of the person until they have a case like this was like backed up by law. So you're going to talk about a lot of these things in law school. And so, yeah, how do we deal with those things, and how do we deal with the triggers that people are going to obviously have as a result of it? Let's see what we have here. Don't get mad, but is the C word worse? You know what? Hello, world. I can't speak for everybody. I don't know. I don't know if the C word is worse or not. They both come from a negative place. Someone trying to demean another one based on a trait that they cannot control. Yeah, they're both bad. I guess somebody may disagree or agree about which one is worse. But I mean, I think they're both bad if you ask me. Let's see. When I would defend her, you would have to prove that her whole intention was to speak that horrific word throughout that case. Yeah, I think I think I don't know if she used it more than once or how often it was used in that case, but it was obviously enough. I think what happened is people went back and rewatched it because they weren't even there for this freaking initial thing. They went back and watched it and like, oh, I'm offended by it. They weren't even there present. I guess one person was just one person, and they went back and told other people. So, kind of analyzing that. And as a lawyer, you have to think about all these different scenarios. Nothing is kind of clear cut and dry usually. That's like a great case, but usually cases are not clear cut and dry. So Loving versus, thank you, Judy. Loving versus Virginia. That's the case where, it made it not illegal for you to marry somebody of the same race, or did getting confused. But that's another racially charged case where people were like, okay, you cannot marry somebody because of their race, and making it talking about that in the classroom, I'm sure brought up a lot of things. People who come from backgrounds where people lied about their race so they can marry somebody else. Like, you probably have people's grandparents, dealing with this. Like, I know my grandparents, well, my great grandparents, one was very fair skinned and one was not. And she was able to sit in the front of the train, and her husband had to sit in the back. And so she's like, I'm gonna sit in the back with my husband. And he's like, ma'am, you don't have to sit in the back. Like, my husband's back here, so I'm gonna sit back here. They thought she was a white woman. Like, they didn't know. They thought she was a white woman married to a dark skinned, a black person. But in reality, they were both black people. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy, like, what it can invoke. And I can understand the triggers behind it, because America has a history. That was just talking about last week. Kamala Harris, they were saying, like, Tim Scott was saying, like, America is not racist. And Kamala Harris, like, yeah, America's not racist, but they have a racist history. And that just, oh, Lord, you would think she said, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but America has a very strong racist history. Let's be clear. So America, I don't know what America you're talking about, but it has a very strong racist history. Whether we're that way now, we're not the exact same way we were before, but we have a long way to go, I think. So let's see. Yeah, the sad thing is that her husband died soon after they got married. He was killed in our. I'm not sure. Oh, the loving case. Thank you, Judy. Judy was paying attention in law school. You see, I'm a little bit, my memory is a little bit not great. I have family that are passing to this day. Yeah, I mean, you never know kind of people's history. And so having somebody being triggered just sitting in the classroom, just like I had that story about my great grandparents, you don't know what somebody else's history is, and how her saying that could have, like, set them off. Is the standard those individual sensitivity level, or the majority? Like, does the majority win, like, oh, I wouldn't be offended by it, so it's okay, versus, oh, I would be offended by it, so it's not okay? I think you're going to have people on both sides of it. And so I don't know if, like, majority wins in this case or not, but you're going to have a variety of people that are going to think differently about this. So let's see. I was an ethnic student major and took race and law. Ah, good job, Judy. See, you bring your different experience. This is what I'm talking about. So I didn't go to law school with Judy. I'm just talking about it because I met her as of last year. But her experiences that she's bringing and what I bring, we bring different experiences, but that doesn't mean that she can't understand certain things because she studied certain things. And certain things I didn't have to study, right? Because I lived it, right? But then I can still appreciate that she studied certain law about things and kind of know the legal history of it that I may not have known. That I can bring what I bring to the table, which is like, hey, Judy, did you know that I actually know somebody personally? And just like Judy would know some things because Judy is of Asian Pacific descent. Shout out to May being Asian Pacific History Month. So she's going to bring different things to the table that I don't know about, that I only could read about, and that she perhaps has lived. And us having a positive dialogue about that is what's going to help us grow further. Like, I'm not going to dispute nothing she says because I didn't experience it. Let's be clear. And hopefully she won't dispute anything because that's my reality, right? I experienced this. You can't say, oh no, this happened to me, and this is why I have this perspective. And so I mentioned before, I'm going to have a different perspective from someone else because of my different experiences. So this particular student in this Rutgers law school class, perhaps she was offended. I just said I wouldn't be. So I'm not faulting her for being offended, but I wouldn't be is what I said. So let's see here. This is a great discussion. Yes, I agree. I'm like this. I'm talking to myself, but I'm talking to you guys. I'm glad you guys are contributing to the discussion because I think this is an important one. And I said at the beginning, I hope that it would be a productive conversation, and I feel like it is because Hello World said, I hope you don't be mad, but ask the question. I'm like, no, I think this is coming from a place of genuine, let's talk about this, put it on the table, see how people think. And I think I can't be mad about that fact that we're talking about it, especially if it's not coming from, here we go back to intent, from a place of negativity. So I didn't think Hello World was coming from a place of negativity. So I didn't receive any questions about the word, the C word, or whatever other words that may be negative. I didn't take it negatively myself personally. I can't speak for other people, but personally I didn't, because I feel like this is the safe space to have the conversation. So you don't go out in the world and act a fool. I sound like somebody's mama. But yes, I think this was a good way, and I'm interested to see how this pans out, because I'm a lawyer and just trying to figure out the legal aspects of things. A lot of times I talk about, when you're a lawyer, you got to take the emotion out of it, right? It's not about emotions, it's about what you can prove or what you can't prove, right? But when you talk about these kind of events, it evokes so many emotions, right? So it's like, how do you get around the emotion it evokes, right? And get down to the legal part of it. And I think that's the problem with a lot of things that happen these days. Like, even with the recent shootings, the police shootings, and like, there's a lot of emotion involved, and rightfully so. Like, if somebody shot or killed somebody that I love, I will be very emotional about it. But then putting my legal hat on and trying to assess the situation and say, okay, what really happened here? What are the facts? And trying to prove the facts, I think that goes to a whole nother thing. And sometimes you end up creating new law. Like, you become the new president because you push forward with a case that you judge, this is the case of first impression and it should be decided differently. And look, who knows? Maybe this case will go further and it'll go on to the Supreme Court. I doubt it. But but we can say that we were part of this discussion in 2021. We talked about this case together. So I think that's a good way. So I'm glad that we were here together to talk about it. If anybody else have any other comments before we close out the live stream? Let's see here. 36 people shot in Chicago this week. Oh goodness. Hello world, what are you doing? Yes, that's a lot. That will bring definitely emotion, negative emotion, to people. So yeah, we're that's a lot. Let's see. There was a situation just last month at Georgetown where the adjunct professor insinuated on the Zoom that her Black students were always at the bottom of class. I read that. So has anybody seen that? Because, well, that it's funny that you bring that up, because I had a different opinion about that as well. So yeah. So in that situation, I wasn't there for that either. But she was saying basically that most of her law students were coming in at the bottom of the class. She said, I just hate to see that they've always come in. It's always the Black students. And they were like, that's not okay to imply that. In that situation, they were saying that she had a personal bias against Black students. So like, they didn't even have a fighting chance. And so that's like a whole nother, yeah. I think race in the law, and I mentioned before, if you watch my other video, this is a shameless plug for the other videos, but if you watch another video about USC and UC Irvine doing these classes about race in the law and trying to make it part of the discussion, but then it's like, who's going to teach these discussion classes? Because if you have professors that perhaps need to be in them classes themselves, are you going to really trust when it's coming from a person that really needs a training? I don't know. Judy, we're not going to go down that, that rabbit hole, but I did see that case. Let's see. I remember having to read a word out loud that was offensive to me when I was in junior high English class. Some of the literature is now banned. Yes, I was talking about that earlier in regards to, I think it was like Huckleberry Finn. There's some other books that had racially charged words, and like, that was an elementary, that's for minors under 18 reading those books. And some of the schools have banned those books. And so, because I guess, at that age, can kids really appreciate it? If they find it okay early in that age, will they grow up thinking that it's okay to use that word and then we have a different problem? It depends on how they were introduced to the word, perhaps, in my opinion. So, yes, I do know about those books that were assigned in junior high or elementary school to other people. Let's see. I thought about talking about it, but there's so much going on. She wasn't saying it in a mean way. Yes, it was a little interesting. I think what I got from the context of it was that she was maybe biased, like, yeah, she doesn't give them a fighting chance. I didn't think necessarily it was coming from a negative way per se, but her implicit bias that would she never think that someone can be at the top of her class, like implicitly not acknowledging that they were good enough. I think maybe that's where it came from. But that one was a tricky one. I would have to say that was a tricky one. That wasn't cut and dry either, but they got rid of her quick, so it wasn't even a discussion for real. I missed that about the adjunct professor. That's racist. Oh, yeah. So yeah, it depends. She seemed concerned about the students, not me. Well, there you go. Judy has a different perspective. So whatever happened, like I said, I wasn't there in that conversation either. So I don't know kind of the context of it. And that's when it goes back to what Miss Linda was saying, like it's hard to prove people's intent when things are happening. So how can you prove? And maybe like she's done things before. It was maybe a congregate of things that had happened. Because yes, perhaps based on that one conversation, you might have had 5 interpretations of what she really meant by it. And I don't know if they gave her opportunity to explain herself. But just like, lobbyists, how lobbyists, it depends on like which lobbyist goes to Congress for ask for information. They're gonna win. Like in this situation, I guess the lobbyists, right, were the student organization was like, we're not having this. And they basically was like, she's out of here. So whether it was correct or not, lobbying for a cause and being behind a particular cause can be a positive thing or a negative thing. But I would agree in that situation. I think that one, I would have to do a little bit more research on that one because just by what she said, I wasn't. Well, when I read it, I wasn't offended when I read it, and when I saw the brief clip of it, I was like, was her tone maybe different? And it's like, well, how do you interpret somebody's tone, and did she mean it that way? Is a little bit tricky. So I don't know. Let's see, Miss Lynn. I have a doctorate in management and I'm still taking HR courses because you truly never stop. Yes, I agree. So if you're like a forever student, like you recognize, and that's good to also recognize that there's always things to learn. If you feel like you can't learn anything more, then I won't call you any names, but there's always something to learn from other people and just learn how things could be differently. So it's like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And if somebody offers a different perspective, if I think about it and not think, oh, why you say that? I don't believe whatever. And think about like, And then I might change my mind about it or might be like, no, I'm doubling down on what I thought. But I did consider what you said. So I think ever changing things, and things have changed over the time. Like what was okay back when I was a kid is some things are not okay now. Just like someone says they read a book and now is no longer allowed in the schools. Like things evolve, and they should, rightfully so. They should evolve. People evolve, and their thoughts about things evolve. So I think that's important to kind of understand that and be open to it. Be open to it. But that doesn't mean you always have to go with the other opposing opinion and be seen as different. Like everybody's gonna have something different. As long as in my opinion, as long as it's not from a place of hate, okay, that's your opinion. I mean, I disagree. What they say, I respectfully disagree. We agree to disagree. That I feel like that goes a long way. So common sense tells me it would cause controversy in that situation. She had none when it came to that. She had none when it came to that decision. You talking about the adjunct professor or the Rutgers law student? Because we talked about several things. And common sense is not that common. Let's be clear. It's not as common as people like to think. So I think it depends. It depends on the person. So and everybody, how people view things is going to be different. So they might like, what's wrong? I ain't no problem with it. And it might be a cultural thing. So to understand, but then if somebody goes, oh, I thought about it, and they come back, and then sometimes you damned if you do, damned if you don't, because it's like, oh, they came and apologized. Oh, the only reason she apologized because she got all this hate. Well, she didn't apologize. She should have apologized. Like you can't win for losing sometimes. You can't please everybody. You're never gonna please everybody. So don't even try to, I would say. But let's see. Oh, the girl. Oh, maybe. If if anyone at Georgetown is going to try to look into the problem and making it better for the Black students, that would be more productive. Yes, I think maybe that's what happened. I don't know if they looked into it more because I feel like I was trying to follow that too when it first came out to see if it like, did she have a history of doing certain things? Were other professors, because it was somebody else on the phone on the line with her too, and it was like, oh, he was complicit because he didn't like tell her to not say, don't say that, so he was complicit. And it was like, well, dang. I mean, he didn't actually say it, but you're called. So it's like, should he have stood up for? That's what they say. He should have stood up and said, no, that was wrong. So yes, I agree. In certain circumstances, that you should stand. If you think that something is being done wrong, and you feel like somebody should stand up for somebody, yes, speak up. Like, don't let's say you see somebody being abused, and you're just gonna let it happen in front of you. Like, no, that's not okay. I'm that kind of person. Like, will stand up. But then in this situation, I don't think it was as blatant. So maybe that's why he didn't say anything. But then they're like, your silence was complicitness. Like, so I don't know if he got fired too, or he resigned or something. I can't remember that one. But yeah, the education at the higher levels is getting beat down. Like, people ain't here for it. Their levels are very sensitive right now because of the culture right now, what's going on in the world. And they're like, no, you're not about to get away. We're tired of this. And then that's when their emotion comes in. And I don't disagree that certain things need to be changed, right? But then it's like, okay, let's step back and look at it. Is this one of the situations that we should fight for? But this is a situation like we're overthinking. It depends on the circumstances. But I definitely fight for worthy causes. Let's be clear. Like, certain things, yes, that's wrong. Straight away. So let's see. Like having a mentorship program, extra classes before law school starts for disadvantaged students. So, okay, the thing about that one, Judy, though, let me just say, I'm glad you brought it up. Extra classes before law school for disadvantaged students. So they do have that at some law schools, right? But it almost seems like you should have a class like USC or a UC Irvine, not for the disadvantaged students. Well, let's see, who's the disadvantaged student? The ones who need to benefit from the experience, because that could be disadvantaged too. Like, perhaps you mean financially or academically disadvantaged, or from a minority group. But what about those people who went to a primarily white institution all their life? They are disadvantaged because they don't have the benefit of having diversity in their life, and they don't know how to deal with other people. So maybe they should have an extra class because that is something they can learn as too. Because I don't want someone feeling like it's a punishment or you need to do some extra courses, right? But perhaps you mean like in the sense like getting them up to par so that they can catch up with other students. I can understand that part. So it depends. It depends. And I think some law schools do have it. I know in my law school, we did have a class that you could take before law school. And some of them do prepare you for like, this is how law school is going to be so that you can acclimate yourself to it. And so it's not a shocker because they want to see you succeed. A lot of people may not know how to survive and succeed in law school. Giving them some tools to do so may be better. But then also, in the same vein, having some class like, oh, did you come from a predominantly white institution? We have some class for you too, because you're going to be in a class with other people that you like never probably seen before in your life. Here's a class for that. So I think, we're going to have a whole bunch of classes at that school. So let's see. Everybody knows when a white person says the N-word, it's offensive to Black people. That's common sense. Well, yes. Well, but as you remember Hello World, though, she was saying it, she wasn't saying it in the sense of she was just using it in her normal vernacular. She was reading a case that had said it. So that was, in my mind, that made a difference. So at UC Berkeley, they had this program called Summer Bridge that gave first generation college students and poor students a leg up. Yes, I think in New Jersey, they have, like NJIT, they have a program similar to that where you can stay in the dorms even beforehand so that you can understand how it works so that you can be successful. I like those kind of programs that kind of help so that everybody can be successful because everybody doesn't have the same foundation, the same resources as other people. So socially disadvantaged. Oh, maybe that's what she was asking Judy. So maybe that's what she meant. Let's see. I keep seeing commercials for Barbary Zero prep course is a big business for them to make extra money. It's something law school should offer free. Yeah, I mean, shoot, I'm about to come up with a 0 L class. Like, because there's so many things that I think would be helpful to have people be successful. And yeah, you can make money off it. You can make money off a lot of things. So you be the first person to come up with the idea, or you really gotta be the first. You just gotta offer something just a little bit. How much is Barbie charging? Okay, we get something about $200 less, and then you can basically get a leg up before you start law school. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of different programs that we could be having, and hopefully by the time like I'm old and say I remember we was talking about this in 2021. We were talking about different programs, and we've come a long way. You know, we've come a long way from the 60s, but we still have a far way to go. So hopefully we come even further by implementing programs, not just talking about it, but actually doing something about it and making changes with people. And it comes from like having people in those positions, the positions of power, not just like, oh, your diversity officer is Black. Like, is the partner also Black in that law firm? Like, is only the diversity partner, the diversity inclusion officers are Black? Putting them power positions of power so that we can make some changes, I think is what's going to go a long way into. So we won't have these conversations as frequently. We'll probably have them still, but as frequently. So that's my personal opinion on the matter. So thank you guys for the discussion, and we got on different topics. Thank you, those who contributed in the comments. Hello world, Miss Linda, Judy, R. Willis, Vivian. Who else did I miss? That's it. Yes. So thank you guys for the ones that commented, and thank you guys for the viewers. We're gonna try to do another live stream soon, but thank you for all supporters. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Check out the other videos. We have all kind of videos: personal finance, law school, investing in yourself. I did a video today about mental health awareness. So it's also Asian Pacific awareness. Asian Pacific History Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. So we have a lot of things going on in the month of May. So check out our channel where we put out hopefully helpful content, productive content so that you guys can benefit, and we benefit too, guys, when you guys can comment and engage in discussion with us. So thanks for joining us tonight. So we'll see you in the next video.